The courtroom was silent except for the soft hum of my portable oxygen concentrator. Judge Martinez's gavel had just fallen, and across the aisle, Margaret, call me Mrs. Henderson. Henderson sat frozen like a deer in headlights. If deer wore polyester pantsuits and had the moral flexibility of a wet noodle, the defendant will rise for sentencing, the judge announced. Margaret's lawyer, some bottom feeder, who probably got his degree from a Cracker Jack box, whispered frantically in her ear. But it was too late. The evidence was overwhelming. The body cam footage, the medical records, the witness testimonies, and my personal favorite, the security camera footage that showed her literally disconnecting my oxygen tank while I was using it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me paint you the full picture of how Homeowners Association Hitler met her Waterloo. It started 6 months ago when I moved into Sunset Meadows, a cookie-cutter subdivision where the houses all look like they were designed by someone who thought personality was a 4-letter word. I'm a disabled veteran, lost my left leg and half my lung capacity courtesy of an IED in Afghanistan. The oxygen tank isn't a fashion statement. It's literally keeping me alive. The HOA had graciously approved my medical equipment placement on my front porch, along with a disabled parking permit for the spot closest to my unit. Everything was documented, legal, and as buttoned up as my old military uniform. Enter Margaret Henderson, HOA board member, self-appointed neighborhood dictator, and the kind of person who probably reports lemonade stands to the city for operating without permits. Margaret was what you'd call a professional Karen. You know the type. Shoulder-length bob that screamed, "I want to speak to your manager," a voice that could strip paint, and the unshakable belief that God had personally appointed her to make everyone else's life miserable. Her opening gambit was subtle. A polite knock on my door. "Mr. Rodriguez, I'm Margaret Henderson from the HOA board." She smiled like a shark. "Smelling blood. I've received some complaints about your medical equipment being visible from the street." I blinked slowly. "You mean the oxygen concentrator that's keeping me alive?" "Well, yes, but you see, it's not very aesthetic. Perhaps you could move it inside, or maybe behind a decorative screen." I explained patiently, professionally, that the equipment needed ventilation and that my doctor had specifically recommended the porch placement. I even showed her my medical documentation and the HOA's previous approval letter. Margaret's smile never wavered. "Oh, I'm sure we can work something out." Famous last words. The harassment started small. Parking violation notices on my windshield even, though I was parked in my designated disabled spot. Noise complaints about my oxygen concentrators, disruptive humming. A citation for my service dog being unleashed in my own fenced backyard. Each time, I'd calmly provide documentation proving my compliance with all regulations. Each time, Margaret would smile, that reptilian smile, and promise to look into it. Then came the certified letter. Notice of violation, unauthorized medical equipment placement. The HOA was demanding I remove my oxygen concentrator from the porch within 48 hours or face daily fines of $200. They were also revoking my disabled parking permit, claiming I hadn't provided adequate documentation. I had provided adequate documentation 3 times. Margaret had simply chosen to ignore it. I knew I was dealing with a special kind of sociopath when she showed up at my door with a clipboard and her phone out, recording. "Mr. Rodriguez, this is your final warning. Remove the equipment immediately or face legal action." "Mum, I have a legal right to this equipment. It's medically necessary, and I have all the required approvals." "Not anymore," she said, waving a piece of paper. "The board voted unanimously to revoke your special accommodations. The board can't revoke federally protected disability rights." Her smile widened. "We'll see about that." That night, I installed security cameras. Call it military instinct, but something told me Margaret wasn't done playing games. I was right. The next morning, I woke up gasping. My oxygen concentrator was silent. I stumbled outside to find Margaret standing on my porch. my oxygen tank's power cord in her hand, her phone still recording. "You're in violation of HOA regulations," she announced to her camera. "This equipment is being removed for the safety and aesthetics of our community." She had literally disconnected my life support while I was using it, and filmed herself doing it. My service dog, Sergeant, was barking frantically. My vision was starting to blur from oxygen deprivation, but I managed to wheeze out, "Mum, you're committing ... a felony. I'm enforcing community standards," she replied, actually stepping between me and my oxygen tank. That's when my neighbor, Mrs. Chen, a retired nurse, came running over. "Margaret, what are you doing? He needs that to breathe. Community regulations supersede individual convenience," Margaret declared, as if she were quoting scripture. Mrs. Chen pushed past her and reconnected my oxygen while calling 911. As the sweet flow of oxygen returned to my lungs, I looked directly at Margaret and sobbed, "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." The police arrived first, then the paramedics, then my lawyer. Margaret tried to spin it as a community safety issue, but it's hard to argue self-defense when you're caught on camera literally disconnecting someone's life support. The detective who took my statement was a fellow veteran. When he saw my medical records and disability documentation, his jaw tightened. "Ma'am," he said to Margaret, "you're under arrest for endangering life and criminal negligence. This is ridiculous." Margaret shrieked as they cuffed her. "I'm trying to maintain property values." "You're trying to maintain your sentence," the detective replied. "Anything you say can and will be used against you in court." The trial was a masterpiece of karmic justice. Margaret's lawyer tried everything, claiming she was enforcing legitimate regulations, arguing she didn't know the equipment was life-sustaining, even suggesting I was faking my disability. Then my lawyer played the security footage. There was Margaret, crystal clear on camera, reading my medical equipment labels before disconnecting the power. There was the time stamp showing she'd done this while I was clearly using the oxygen. There was audio of her saying, "I know exactly what this does, and I don't care." The prosecutor had built a case so airtight it could have been used as a medical device, but the real kicker: my lawyer had subpoenaed Margaret's phone records and social media accounts. Turns out she'd been bragging about her disabled veteran takedown in her HOA Facebook group for weeks before the incident. She had literally documented her premeditation. The jury deliberated for exactly 47 minutes. Guilty on all counts. Margaret broke down crying as the judge sentenced her to 2 years in prison for endangering life, plus criminal negligence charges, plus restitution for my medical expenses and emotional distress. The HOA board, suddenly discovering they had spines, voted unanimously to remove her from all positions and ban her from future participation. Her husband filed for divorce while she was being processed into county lockup. The local news picked up the story. HOA board member sentenced for disconnecting veteran's oxygen tank made national headlines. As I walked out of the courthouse, oxygen concentrator humming quietly beside me, I couldn't help but smile. Margaret had spent months trying to remove my life support from the neighborhood. Instead, she'd removed herself from civilized society. Justice, like oxygen, is something you don't fully appreciate until someone tries to take it away from you.